Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Cafe. I've got Jason Pierce here with me, my buddy, to talk about his journey, his story.
Yeah.
Welcome, mate.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Excellent. We're here in a cafe called Camu Cafe. Here we go. And fantastic place. What would you call this? Melbourne, I guess?
Malvern? It is Malvern, yeah.
It is Melbourne.
Yep.
And if you're wondering where Melbourne is, it's in Melbourne, in Australia, if you're overseas. And wonderful cafe. And I'm looking at the menu here, mate. I know you like everything.
I do.
I'm going to go with the crab benny after this. And crab benny, sauteed crab with poached eggs and sriracha hollandaise. I don't think I've ever had sriracha hollandaise before.
Nice.
On a beetroot bun with scallops. Fantastic. Before I start, I just want to explain a little bit to the audience about Let's Talk and Let's Talk Cafe. So Let's Talk is a program, it's a movement to encourage people to talk about their concerns before they escalate to bigger issues, including mental illness and even suicide. Now, Let's Talk is two acronyms. LETS is letting everyone talk safely, which is basically the vision of the program.
Yep.
I know you guys have gone through the program as well, so you'll talk a bit about that. And talk are the four strategies, TALK. Tell, acknowledge, listen, and keep in touch. So see the telltale signs and start a conversation. And when they open up, acknowledge them. Not jump to providing advice or sharing your story, but acknowledge them in the first instance. And then listen, L for listen, and then K for keep in touch. So we are going to go through these strategies while we talk to Jason, while he shares his story. Is that okay?
That's
and so let me introduce Jason. Okay. Now, Jason lives in Melbourne, okay, and has been married to his wife, Kelly, for the last 8 years. They have two beautiful dogs, West Highland Terriers.
Correct.
Maggie and Brody.
Otherwise known as the two terrors.
The two terrors,
Two
okay?
terrors, yeah.
Spoiled by daddy, right?
Yes.
Jason has been a technology leader for over 20 years and is the current Chief Technology Officer, is that correct? At IFS, looking after South Asia Pacific, Japan, Middle East, and Africa regions. He has spent most of his life traveling and living in overseas, US, UK, Asia, Singapore.
Correct, yes.
But relocated to Australia from Singapore when he met Kelly. He's also a pilot.
Correct.
And loves anything that's fast. Fast cars?
Fast cars, fast bikes.
Oh, lovely.
Yep.
Okay. And he reckons he spends way too much time trying to master Pink Floyd classic on guitar.
And my neighbours are all going deaf because of it, so yes, that is
Mate,
true.
you bought your guitar here, mate.
I should have done.
You know? Jason, thank you for joining us.
Good to be here.
Let me just firstly acknowledge you for your openness and your courage for sharing a story about pretty much how you hit your depression for the last 17 years. And now you're talking about it openly. You're talking not just to me, but talking and supporting the people who are listening to this program.
Yep.
So Jason, my first question to you is 17 years. It's a long time to hide your depression. Share with us your journey, how it all started.
Yeah, it's a long drawn out process. And like I wouldn't say that I hit it on purpose. It just happened to be that way. But really, in my early 20s, I spent a lot of time focusing on work, and I was traveling like crazy. So I was, life was pretty good. I was enjoying myself. It was a great time.
Yeah.
And then when I turned 31, I was actually in New York at the time, and I came back to Australia for Christmas, and I'd been feeling really average for a long time.
Yeah.
Like I had this flu I couldn't get rid of.
Yeah.
I was fatigued. I was cranky the whole lot. I got diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So that was a bit of a shock to the system.
Yeah.
So I went through, that whole process of, understanding what that meant, what the whole treatment process would look like, and these sort of things. And that's quite a rough patch to go through, especially for someone that thinks they're normal or healthy and didn't see any of the really the telltale signs.
Yeah.
So I went through all the treatment and the rest of it. And look,
Thank you.
I was okay with the treatment. You know, a couple of points there, it got pretty serious.
Yeah.
So I made a few decisions about, you know, what was coming. Anyway, the outcome was obviously positive because I'm talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're in remission now?
In remission.
Yeah.
I was in remission, but not now. That was a long time ago. It's 31.
Okay.
So
Okay.
so then what happens is usually when you go through something like that,
Yeah.
A lot of people either go two ways. They either go, I'm going to change your world. Wow, it's fantastic. Got a second lease on life.
Yep.
Or you can go the other way, which is, what do I do now? And I went down the second part of what do I do now? I just wasn't prepared to come out the other side. So that led to some pretty dark moments where, you know, I became a bit more reclusive. I jumped back into work thinking that things would change. Just back into the same thing, and I wasn't really enjoying it. And and so as a result, I thought I needed to change something.
Yeah.
So I went through and changed jobs, you know, changed locations, moved up to Singapore.
Yeah.
Figured that a fresh start would really help just to do a whole reset, I think. But the challenge with that is what happens is you move to a new country by yourself. You're fairly isolated.
Yeah.
And if you don't get yourself into a good social circle and those things, you spend a lot of time by yourself. And as you know, when you are by yourself, the things that go through your head aren't necessarily always positive. So,
absolutely.
So you know, I spent that time in Singapore. And look, I met a great group of friends. I love those guys and girls a lot. But what happened to me is I went through what I think I explained to you as the 3Ds.
Yeah.
Which was deny I have had a problem.
Deny.
Go out drinking because it was good. It was good fun.
Yeah.
And then wake up in the morning and think, do it again.
Do it again.
Or do nothing.
Oh, do nothing.
So that was a vicious cycle that I got stuck into for a long time.
Yeah.
Not that I was an alcoholic, but I really, you know, going out with people that I was friends with was really the only way that I would get a smile on my face. Like I didn't have anything else that was really interesting. And I was doing a lot of travel. I was always away. Like my first year in Singapore, I think I was like 300 days of the year out of the country. So so what happens is you get stuck in, it's like Groundhog Day. You get stuck in a process.
Yeah.
And then the last thing on your mind is, well, I have depression.
Yeah.
So to be honest with you, I think the reason why it's taken 17 years is a number of factors. First one is didn't know what depression was. Okay. Which is so I wasn't aware that I was showing the signs of depression. Yeah. Like the mood swings and the basically just shutting down and external contact, those sort of things. Yeah. I was sleeping terribly. And it wasn't until I met Kelly, which was late 39, that I realized I had sleep apnea. So, so I've been living through a whole process of traveling time zones, body clock, sleep apnea, and just thinking I was grumpy because of that, but I wasn't just grumpy. Tired. I was tired. Like I was tired, and I was depressed because I wasn't doing what I wanted to do, and I still had some kind of full PTSD about the cancer thing. I think I was just that whole process straight out. Yeah. So look, I met Kelly. Obviously, that's the highlight of my life to date. Yeah. Other than getting the 2 dogs, of course, which is quite second, but she won't let me saying that. But through that whole process of leaving Singapore and coming back into Melbourne, that made it worse. Yeah. Because I came back here, and I didn't adjust to Melbourne for a good 3 years. Like I just didn't want to be here really. Yeah. Like I wanted to be here because of her, but myself, I didn't kind of like the environment, and it just took a long time to get settled. Yeah. And so that makes it worse, especially when you have someone else that you really care about. That's your partner's going to be your partner.
Absolutely, absolutely.
She was probably thinking, well, what am I doing with this guy?
And she didn't know.
Didn't know, because no one knew. Yeah. So I think people just thought that was me. That was my personality, and obviously, people now know that's different. But I think that it's just it's a hard process because you have to be really honest with yourself that you have a problem. Yeah. And I wasn't. So I basically lied to myself all that time, thinking, I don't have a problem. But I don't need to go and see anybody about it. Yeah. And that's pretty much, got married, and now I'm 49 now. And it wasn't really until last year with work at IFS, we had a real issue with our company, and a lot of companies did last year, where COVID hit. And as a result, everything changed for people. People were worried about their finances, and people were worried about health of their families and those sort of things. And like most organisations, we weren't prepared to deal with those situations. And so we went through quite a tough period where we just didn't know what to do. And we had people that were affected, not just at work, but people that we will know in the community were affected by it. No one knows how to deal with mental health. Well, it's not, it's pervasive in the community, but the education around it isn't so. So I think that's where we reached out to you and Let's Talk, and that process was really what set not just the company journey, but my own personal journey as a result has been a significant change.
Yeah. So you were trained as a Let's Talk mentor.
I was.
And it was almost like you were still kind of denying your, your journey on with depression. And it is a journey, isn't it? It is a journey that we go through, but you were prepared to help others.
Yep.
And in that helping others, you had that confidence, or whatever you want to call it, to come out and share your story, right?
Yeah, it was quite strange, and you're right. I was a mentor helping people that were suffering from mental health issues, while still denying I had them myself.
Yeah.
But what it did is it did two things. One is it really allowed me to impart some knowledge onto those people regarding the things that they could do to potentially deal with it.
Yeah.
So things that I'd learned from Let's Talk, but also things that I was trying to do myself.
Yeah.
And then I got to a point where I thought, well, if I'm going to be serious about this, I've got to be honest with my situation. So I came out on one of those on that group call and basically said, hey, guess what? Here's my story, and people were quite shocked.
Yeah.
I was actually quite shocked to hear it, to be honest with you, because I wasn't expecting to do it. But I felt that the Let's Talk program, and with a group of people that are committed to the same kind of thing, you get that. You mentioned before psychological safety. So there was no fear at that time with that audience to open up and say, look, I might be the CTO, but guess what? I suffer from depression as well, and here's the process.
Yeah. So you saw the telltale signs, lack of sleep, drunkenness, moodiness. There's a few of those. Did others see the telltale signs and ask you?
Yeah, it's a good question. So throughout the whole time that I was overseas, no.
Yep.
And that's not a fault of anybody's, really.
Yeah.
It's not a sort of conversation that gets brought up very easily. Now there's a stigma attached to mental health issues, both in the workplace, but also in public as well.
Yeah.
And so it's quite a hard topic to talk about.
Yeah.
Because if I met you for the first time, or I've just met you, I've known you for 3 months, what am I going to do? Say, hey, Chief, guess what? I'm depressed, or you're going to say, hey, Jason, are you depressed? It's quite a hard first conversation to have.
Yeah.
So it was never really talked about. People would comment sometimes on some behaviour. Like I went through periods in Singapore with quite erratic behaviour, mood swings, all that sort of things.
Yeah.
To the point where I'm frustrated. I had a very short temper, things that I'd never had.
Yeah.
Earlier in life, and so a couple of comments here and there, but it wasn't really until I came back to Melbourne, and I started to spend more time with Kelly, and she never outright came out and said you're depressed. She came out and said, do you realise that you do these things?
And the behaviours,
and then as soon as that happened, and I realised that she was seeing what was going on. I still didn't tell her I was depressed. I didn't tell anybody, but I thought I need to do something about it.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything about it. I just thought, it'll fix itself.
Yeah.
Let it go. Yeah. And then it wasn't really until we started to do Let's Talk, and I realised that sometimes the hardest part is to have the first conversation.
Yeah.
I tell everyone it took me 17 years to get the courage to do it.
Yeah,
and that's what it like. It's a long process for someone that's proud, and someone that has not scared to admit a little bit of an ego sometimes. It's a hard thing to. It's hard to admit that you have a trait that's not good, but then you realise that vulnerability is actually a strength, it's not a weakness, and that's the key. Once you work that out, the conversation's easy.
And I'll even put my head out to say, not necessarily a trait that's not good, but a trait that is not widely accepted.
Exactly right. Yep.
Because we have all different traits.
You think it's a fault yourself. So,
I mean, feeling sad, that's a feeling,
That's right.
as much as feeling happy it is. So a lot of people do ask me in the program and outside the program, how do we approach, as you said, you can't just go up there, hey, do you have depression? But how do you approach someone and have that first conversation? And I always try to keep things simple. And I always say, look, use the faculties, the things you've already been given, your eyesight, see the telltale signs, your hearing, hear the telltale signs, your feeling, look, I feel that you're not, you're a bit grumpy today or you're moody today.
Yeah.
Or, and know the patterns, know the behaviors and approach someone. And you can simply approach by explaining what you see, what you hear, what you feel, what you know. Okay. So, I feel that, there's something bothering you there, this last couple of weeks, you've been a little bit tired, for example. Would you like to talk? So, I mean, and I always say there's no, perfect wording to use to start a conversation. But if you have the right intent, if you really care for that person, it'll come out well. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really important. But so tell, which is the first strategy of talk, T, is about seeing the telltale signs and then approaching that person. And it goes a bit deep as well. The second part is acknowledge. A for acknowledge. And let me acknowledge Jason before I go any further for his courage and his truthfulness. There's a beautiful saying by Brené Brown. I love this quote for Brené Brown. She talks about vulnerability. She talks that vulnerability sounds like the truth, needs a lot of courage. Both truth and courage are not comfortable. They're not easy, but we do it, and they are never a weakness. See that beautiful quote by Brené Brown. And so I just want to really acknowledge your vulnerability. And when I say vulnerability, I mean truthfulness and courage to come and share this story with us, because the people who are listening at home and who are going through something similar or know someone who's going through something similar your story will definitely help them, hopefully encourage you to come out and talk about it as well. Now, let's talk about acknowledge. When did you really start acknowledging that you had mental illness?
That's a really good question. Like I would have said maybe last year. So, and there's two parts. One is that you don't necessarily think that depression is a mental illness. But it is, because obviously, the way that you're wired and the chemicals in your brain act in a strange way when you have certain behaviours. So, look, I think it wasn't until last year where I really, actually, after I became a Let'sTALK mentor, really, where I really thought, if I don't do something about it, and I don't tell someone, I'm going to live like this for a long time, and that's not fair on anybody. Like I never got to a point where I was suicidal and that sort of things. But I got to a point where I was very, very dark. Like if I could have spent time in my own company, that's what I'd do. I didn't want to be social. And
withdrawing.
All that sort of thing. And that was, and when your partner in life is a social butterfly, that creates tension and friction. And I think it got to the point where there were so many of those episodes where there was disappointment from her that I didn't want to be part of, life, so to speak. That I thought, it is. So, and then also after mentoring other people at work, I realised that I was giving them advice and making them go and see other professionals, because obviously it gets to the point where it's outside your realm of knowledge. So you make some recommendations. And then when they came back saying that two things. One is that they were seeking help and they were putting some things in place. That was great, because that means that they've listened to you, acknowledged your problem. But also for me, then I thought, well, I have to do it as well, because they're seeing good results. It's tough to admit that you have a mental illness.
Absolutely.
That's the problem.
How do you feel about it now? How do you acknowledge yourself now? I mean, you're coming and talking openly, but still, is there an element of, feeling uncomfortable about this?
Look, I think it's always uncomfortable. you don't walk around with a t-shirt saying I have depression.
Yeah.
But it's more comfortable than it would have ever been before.
Yeah.
And the thing is, remember, and you're right before, this whole thing's a journey. So you don't diagnose depression like you do with the flu. Like, here's some tablets, go rest home. It's like, it's a continual thing, because what happens is there'll be certain triggers in your life that set you off for feeling the way that you do. And until you know what those triggers are, it's very hard to deal with it. So there's a lot of triggers that happen. So I think that's the thing. It's not emotional. I'm really happy that I did it. Like, it's a relief. But I'm more happy that people that were affected by it now know, and they know that it's not that I'm not wanting to spend time with them. It's not that anything else other than the fact that I'm having some challenges, and it's okay to have some challenges.
Yeah. We've spoken about this before, and I know you get a little bit emotional, not so much about, when you talk internally, but when you talk externally, especially, with Kelly and your friends. How did, when you came out and spoke to Kelly, your family about depression, how did they acknowledge you?
Yeah, look, my family probably doesn't know, because I haven't spent much time there. They're in Perth, so unfortunately, it's not the sort of conversation you want to have on a phone call. But with Kelly, I think for Kelly it was relief that I'd finally acknowledged that something was happening. Yeah. Because she'd obviously seen that.
Yeah.
But again, it's a hard conversation for even your partner to raise with you as well.
Yeah.
It's because I'm sure that there was times where she wanted to say something, and she knew that my response would have been that stupid. But denial. We went back to the 3 Ds again.
Yeah, 3 Ds. Yeah.
Or the 2 Ds without drinking, so the denial and do nothing thing. But I think that she's probably got the point now where, now that she knows that I understand, it's a relief for her. It's a load off her shoulders. Yeah. It's a load off my shoulders, and as a team, we know how to deal with it. Yeah. And that's a long journey. Like, I didn't start being a psychologist until recently. Yeah. Again, so I was telling everyone all through last year, go and seek help. Yeah. And I was too scared to go to the GP and say, hey, Dr. Tilak, can you give me a mental health plan? Yeah. Yeah. Because and it's pretty weird. Like, and I have a great relationship with my GP, right? Yeah. And he's a flying nut, so we get on really well. But I felt uncomfortable talking to him about it. Yeah. I actually felt a sense of, what's he going to think now? Yeah. He's going to think this guy that he talks to and loves flying and the rest of it. Yeah. Oh my God. So, but he was really good about it. Yeah. And then when I started to see Antoinette, my psychologist, the things that get put in place, they correlate beautifully with Let'sTALK. Yep. But B, just having a person that knows how to deal with the feeling. Yeah. Because again, they're not there to fix you. Yeah. Yeah. But they're there to give you pointers and guides as to how you can make your life a little bit more bearable. Manage that process. Yeah. Like, I don't think you ever get cured of depression, but I think you can alleviate a lot of the behaviours associated with it by knowing that, okay, this situation's coming up. Yeah. I can either go this way or this way. And if you take the glass half full approach. Yeah. And I use the glass because you're going to talk about the emptying the glass in a minute. I know it. But yeah, so that's why, and that's a good thing about it. Beautiful.
I love it. And acknowledging when people do open up. Yeah. And I think in your case, correct me if I'm wrong, you had accepted it yourself, isn't it? It sounds to me like, you needed to acknowledge it yourself first. Because when you opened up on that call, when you were doing the Let'sTALK program and there was other Let'sTALK mentors and you opened up, was there any comeback to that? Was there any negative comeback to that?
No, there was no negative comeback. There was a lot of shocked faces on the call.
Shocked faces? Okay.
But you know what? I think what it really did is it's opened up the door for more people to want to talk.
Beautiful.
So what it is, it encouraged other people in the business to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Because look, CTO or anybody that's in a leadership role is meant to be a tower strength and and there's a certain expectation.
Yeah.
And what we aren't really known for is being personable. Look, and my main goal in my role is to look after my people. So I have a very personal touch to the way I look after people and teams and things. So that's my main concern is that. And I think them seeing me be vulnerable, I think they felt that, okay, I was actually falling on my sword in terms of, okay, I was actually seriously happy to work with people, but also I cared. And I think that's the thing that came out is that once a leader or someone that's got responsibility, or anybody really, cover that says it, it actually makes other people think, well, if he or she can do it, then I can do it, but it still takes the person a period of time because different people react differently. So in my case, it took me 17 years to get the courage to do it, which I'm not proud of, but that's what happened.
But you're here.
Other people can
That's
do
your
it.
journey,
And once you're there, you're there.
It's never too late.
It's never too late.
Yeah. And one of the things we talk about in the Let's Talk program about acknowledge is when people do open up, and is to acknowledge them, not to dive in with your thoughts straight away, or not dive in with your own stories, because we all have our own stories. And one of the things we do is compelled to dive in with our own stories. And then sometimes I always think that people dive in with their own stories because they haven't been listened to as well. They want to come out and talk about it. But it's really important to acknowledge. One of the easiest way to acknowledge is to acknowledge their character strengths. Like I acknowledge your courage. Simple. And it kind of almost creates that anchor, or it helps me to sort of stop and think and not jump in with solutions or advice or my own story. So acknowledging is an important part. The third strategy is listen. So we've got tell, acknowledge, listen. TAL and K is the last one. But listening is a tough gig, right? At the best of times. How did you listen to yourself before a year ago, and how do you listen to yourself today in terms of your own feelings of
look, it's a good question. I think if I go back to pre-program, obviously I wasn't listening to myself because I wasn't doing anything about it. I was just thinking that thinking that it'll be okay. I'm good. I'm going to have good days and bad days. It's okay. But I think after the program, you'd be surprised how much weight comes off your shoulders. You do meditation, you do the deep breath and the breathe out. The breathe out is like the conversation piece. And you made a really important point before. It's about the acknowledge. You have to let the person, as we both say, empty the glass, because if they don't get it all out, you get a few two things. One is they're not going to want to keep the conversation going because you're not listening to them. Because most of the time, the first conversation is the hardest one. And it's the one that you, as a mentor or as a listener, have to spend the most time. Because we as humans always want to create the instant fix. You get 20 seconds into a conversation and you hear the person saying, I can fix it. But that's not what they want to hear. The thing to remember is that it's not a one-off transaction, right? It's like you are investing your time and that person's time to put them through a significant part of their life. Really, it's a chunk of burden and worry. So listening is really, really, really important, and it is the hardest skill.
It is the hardest skill. And we talk about emptying the cup. So people come with a full cup. They come with a full cup, and the last thing you want to do is fill it even more when they're not really ready to take any more. So the best thing to do, listening is all about getting the other person to empty their cup, so that later on, your advice and your story will make a difference. Potentially could make a difference, but they need to have an empty cup first.
If you interrupt them, there's a chance that they'll clam up.
Absolutely.
And to do that, then what happens the next time around is it creates a situation where you have to put so much more effort into the courage of having a conversation. Some people don't recover.
Yeah.
So listening's really, really tough, but I think it's it really is the most important part. If you are not a good listener, then maybe this isn't the right thing for you. Look, it's great to be there to support, but you need to learn to be a great listener.
Yeah.
And it's tough.
And we talk about the 3 F's in listen, right? In the Let's Talk program now. And there's a lot of active listening skills, but we do go through that as well. But one of the simplest way is, I call it the 3 F's in listening. The 3 F's, okay? I'm sure that got everyone's attention. The 3 F's in listening.
This is new.
because it is difficult, and I think the reason people jump to advice or not advice, just walk the other way, is a natural response. It's our natural fight or flight response. If it's a fight response, it's about jumping in to give solutions or reprimand them or share the story. It's really a fight response to emotional something they've heard emotionally, because they're kind of trying to deal with it as well. So it's not a bad thing, guys, to jump in and advise, and it's almost like a normal thing, but we need to almost park that for a little bit and get the person to listen. If it's a flight response, it really means denial. I don't want to hear about it. See you later. Under the carpet sort of thing. So both responses are not really helpful in the outset to be a good listener. So one of the easiest things to be a good listener is to have a mindset of asking 3 questions. We call it the 3 F's: facts, feelings, and fears. 3 questions about the facts, feelings, fears. And you can simply ask, to get the facts out, what happened? How simple is that? Just a simple question as, what happened? How did that make you feel? Feelings. And what scares you most about it? Fears. 3 simple questions. What happened? How did that make you feel? What scares you most about it? And you can use your words and sort of style to ask those questions. But if you ask those questions, what actually helps the other person is for them to externalize we call it the blow the balloon, They blow the balloon, and then now we can see the balloon, you can see it, I can see it, we can examine it very objectively and sort of put some distance between the heat of that emotion. And that's where we talk about how to be a better listener. So, but it's also preparing to have that discussion, isn't it? It is tough to listen sometimes, but it's actually almost psyching yourself. Look, here are the questions I'm going to ask. I'm going to, because and if you're prepared and know that I'll jump in to rescue, but if you're prepared, I think you'll do a better job in listening.
There's 2 parts to that too. One is that you are not always going to get a person to talk the first question that you ask. So be prepared that it may take a few times to get someone to do it. Also, if you are going to be the listener, do it in an environment where the person feels safe. Don't do it in the middle of the office. Go for a walk around the park at lunchtime, or get the person into an environment where
ask them.
Exactly. Would you like to go for a walk, talk about X? I've noticed that you are exhibiting this behaviour. Let's go and get a milkshake down the road. Whatever.
Let's talk Café. Let's go for a coffee.
Cafe for the chili scrambled eggs, and but it's as simple as that. So environment is important. But again, you're investing on the journey to help the person. So don't just assume that one question is going to solve all the problems.
And that's a really good point. It's a journey. It's not one conversation, isn't it? And that conversation, the first conversation, may not even get to the root cause of the problem, or they might not open up fully.
People like me, people, I'm sure people have asked me across the, am I okay, or do I feel okay? I was, yep. So again, it might take a long time to get someone to open up, and it's different people have different personalities. If someone is depressed, sometimes they just want to get it out. They're so happy that someone's listening. But other times they don't, because they're embarrassed by the feeling of depression. So that's why that asking the question again and again and again in different form, at a point, the person who is being asked realizes that you actually are invested in knowing what's going on.
Care.
That's a big thing. You care. That's right.
Yeah. And it really comes down to that persistence. And I remember doing some training at your organization early on last year. One of the participants asked me, "What if you're bugging them? Would you be bugging them if you persistently ask, would you like to talk? Would you like to talk?" kind of thing. And I thought about that, and it actually came from a sort of older person. And I asked them, "Do you have kids?" And they just, yeah, And do they work? Yes, they work. And I said, then I sort of said, would you want their colleagues or their manager to persist if they have a problem, to help them? Would you like them to persist to help your kids, your son or daughter? And she said yes.
Yeah.
So if it's okay for your kids, for strangers or your colleagues to persist to help them, then it's okay for us to persist to help others. But in saying that,
persist, don't push.
Persist but don't push. Exactly right. And persistence could be few little touches here and there.
Exactly right.
At different times. It doesn't have to be the same day. But really, if you do persist with care, people will understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, if you still feel that they have a concern, maybe it's not me, maybe it's somebody else. I might say, "Hey, Jason, I feel this person's not. You're more closer to that person. Would you like to go and maybe have a chat with them?" Yeah.
And look, you've got to keep these conversations confidential too. So it's not the sort of thing that if someone really wants to open up to you and they get the courage to do it, the last thing you want to do is post it on Facebook. So keep every conversation confidential.
Yeah.
Because that builds trust, and without trust, you can't be successful.
Absolutely. And we talk about promising advocacy than secrecy. Because in most cases, people might say, "Look, I'll tell you, but please don't tell anyone."
Yeah.
And it puts you in a sort of a difficult situation. And the important things to do, when they say don't tell anyone, what they really mean is don't tell the whole world.
Yeah, don't broadcast it. That's right.
But it's okay to tell people that can help them.
Yeah.
So I always say, if somebody says please don't tell anyone, I always say, look, nobody has to know.
Yeah.
Just the people who are going to help you. Okay, and we'll talk about who those people are before you even telling them, and have that rapport, build that trust, because it is trust, isn't it?
It is trust. Yeah.
That opens up conversations and makes a difference. Let's talk about the fourth strategy. So we talked about tell, acknowledge, listen. The fourth is K for keep in touch, talk. How important is it for you to keep in touch with your village, to support you through this journey?
I guess the most critical, well, outside of listen, it's the second most critical thing, because sometimes this will be a long-term thing.
Yeah.
So those touch points do two things. It encourages the person who's suffering to keep up the help and the talking and the rest of it.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, because they know that there's going to be a regular check-in at some point. So that's great for that person. That's pretty important.
Yeah.
And then also, again, it's quite hard to maintain that keep in touch. So you have to be sure that you want to be invested in it. You can't just assume that because the person is getting professional help or medication with it, that they are going to be okay. So the touch point becomes really important, because there may be other issues that arise, or there may be other things that occur and the person wants to talk again. I think keeping in touch just really gives the person confidence to keep going. It's probably the main thing. It's, you care. So if you care, I want to prove to you that I'm actually doing this.
Yeah.
And what will happen over time is you'll start to see the behaviour changes in the person, both positive and negative, depending on which way they're going. And based on that interaction, there's no harm in saying, "Hey, I noticed you've been great at doing these things," and that's that positive uplift.
Yeah.
Goes a long way to helping the person. So the keep in touch really is. It's not like a mentor. It's more like you're buddying up to make sure that the person is still okay, because they still want to have
supported.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Jason, people who are listening to this story, to your story, who may be going through something similar, maybe still in that the 3Ds part, you know, in denial, maybe it's depression, maybe it's anxiety, maybe just it's feeling sad, you know. What's your message to those people who are actually going through something similar to yours?
So it's a great question. It's actually quite a hard question, because I think every person has a different circumstance.
Yeah.
I always find this question hard to answer, because it brings up a lot of things that I think the main thing is that if you keep denying it, you aren't living life to the full. You're missing out on something. So, like, I look back on the last 17 years, and would I have changed would it have changed my circumstances? Probably not. But would it have changed my outlook, and would I have been more outgoing and done more things? Yes. So I probably missed a lot of experiences.
Yeah.
And being insular and not being exposed to the environments that you're in is not healthy. So I think that the sooner that you can realize, and you have to realize yourself first that you are struggling.
Yeah.
And until you can be honest with yourself that you're struggling, you are never going to get to the point where you are going to be open to myself. Like, would my outlook have changed if I had done this at 32, 33? Yeah, I would have had a different. I would have had that piece of life that I missed, which is the experience piece.
Yeah.
Would I have known how to ask the question back then? No, because no one really did. Whereas now it's different. Now we have a lot of good online resources. We have Let'sTALK program. We have all these great tools that are available to us.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the hardest part is asking the question. Doing the hardest conversation is the first one.
Yep.
And once you really get that first question out of the way, I'm losing the voice now. It's amazing how much it makes you feel better and more confident to keep going.
Yeah. What's your message to carers? So what's your message to family members and friends who are kind of notice that there is something there that's different about the person? You know, they're going through those mood swings or whatever it is. How can they help?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough because it's emotional. It's tough because it's frustrating. It's tough because sometimes it's time consuming.
Yeah.
It's all these different emotions. So the support network has to be very strong, and it's realizing that the person's crying out for help.
Yeah.
They really want help. Sometimes they may deny they need help, but just knowing that people are there and people care and people are able to communicate is the most important piece.
Yeah.
It's really tough. Like I know from being a mentor as well, but also living on the other side of being the person with depression.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have days where it's just rock bottom.
Absolutely.
And it's not that you're going to do anything stupid, but there's just days where you just don't want to know about a thing. That's the way that the brain works.
Yeah.
So you have to expect there's going to be highs and lows.
Sure.
But you have to be there for the long haul.
Absolutely.
It's you can't. You have to help the person make the decision themselves that they need to get help.
Yeah.
Because if you force the point, they'll switch off. Like in my case, I would have switched off.
Yeah.
Because I have that sort of attitude.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do. But if you can coach the person to
Empower
believing that they are making the right decision for themselves, it's good. And look, family's the hardest part because you love the person so much that you want to jump into the fix.
Yeah. Good point.
So you've got to hold back on the fix and do the listener really well. And look at that time, especially like I know you've done some previous sessions with people that are a lot younger than me, and they're at their age where that age group, that teenage to early teens, early 20s, sorry, is the hardest part.
Yeah.
There's so much stigma around social networks and all these things, and everyone's wired, everyone's 24/7, but it's hard to get that break. So
Yeah.
it's tough. You just have to stick it out.
Yeah. It's a good point you really made, Jason, about it's tough when it's family, because you love them so much and because you're emotionally connected to them, and sometimes you bias. And
They're the hardest people to tell.
Yeah.
It's harder to tell your family
Yeah.
than to tell your friends that you think you have a problem.
That's right.
Because what happens is you tell your family, what's the first reaction that you get?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
How could I not see this?
Yeah.
I'm a terrible parent.
Yeah.
All these things come out, right?
Ridiculous,
And it's never the case.
Cool. So one of the things we do talk about the Let'sTALK program is we don't have to do this alone. There's a lot of professionals, other friends, other family members, and I find that not everyone is geared to support and help, especially someone with a mental illness.
Yep.
But you don't have to do this alone. There are people around you.
Yep.
You're seeing a psychologist. There are counselors. That it's about building the village around the person.
Yep.
The village. We are so connected these days with with social media. I find that authentic connections have really diminished.
Yeah.
And that is one of the issues we have in our world today. Total isolation. Although connected, we are still isolated in that form.
Well, we text, we don't call.
That's right.
We email, we don't call. We don't spend enough time at the cafe having one-on-one interactions.
That's why I'm meeting you. It's such a great thing to just.
No, we laugh at it. It's true. You can't have a conversation with someone with mental illness over text. So you have to make that effort.
That's a really good point. Guys, Jason, thank you so much for coming and sharing this story with us. It's going to help lots of people who are watching here, not just the people who are going through the stuff that you're going through. And I always say it's a living experience, not a lived-in experience. It's a living. We live with this. I was diagnosed with OCD 20 years ago. This is my passion about mental health. I always jokingly say I turf my Prozac to my purpose, and purpose is to do things like Let'sTALK and help others. And it is important to have that purpose, isn't it? Because that really helps people to come out of the shadows and
purpose, hobby, whatever it is. Yeah.
Absolutely. So guys, thanks again for sharing. I really appreciate your time. Guys, if you're out there and going through a similar situation as Jason has, or know someone, please reach out. Please reach out to your family and friends. And sometimes, if that's not possible, please reach out to a call center or a doctor in your area, in your country. And if you're living in Australia, if you're listening here, there's beautiful services like Lifeline, Beyond Blue, Kids Helpline, and many more. So please talk about it. And this is exactly what Let'sTALK is all about. It's about having those conversations to air it out and feel lighter about the situation. It might not necessarily resolve the issue, but it's the journey.
It's the journey.
It is the journey of starting to resolve and manage your concerns. So if you're also out there who would like to share your story, just like Jason has, please contact us. We'd love to have you on the show as well. So until next time, our message is keep talking.
Let's talk more.
And let's talk more. Mate, let's have some breakfast.
Let's have some breakfast.
All right. Catch you later.